What's going on, traders, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. In the Weekly Watchlist, I do a technical analysis and give you some of my thoughts on the tickers on the left here. We have the broad market, comprised of SPY, the Qs, and IWM. After that, we have a look at Apple, Netflix, Tesla, Alibaba, Facebook, NVDA, and Roku. If you'd like to see me add anything to this list, you can let me know down below in the comments section or shoot me an email, and we can certainly have a look in next week's video. With that, let's get started on the broad market. Alrighty, so we're starting with the SPY weekly chart here, and I just want to bring up the weekly chart because it offers a bit of a clearer picture on where our major supports and resistances are. If you look here, it's very clear where the bottoms are, bottoms support here, and then it's very clear where our resistances are. Here's our triple top in 2018, carried through as resistance as we approach it here in 2019. This next level comes from our previous all-time high, and our all-time high, obviously. So weekly chart just makes these levels a little bit easier to map out. So if you're having trouble on the daily, zoom out to the weekly, have a check there. We'll zoom into the daily now, though, to talk about what's been happening. So we have this bit of a pretty indecisive week here for the most part. Market wasn't sure whether it wanted to move lower here, higher here. This day was sort of inside of the range of these two candles. The next day, the same thing. And then we finally broke out of this little pattern here towards the upper range of our balance, if you will. So the price came down, touched our resistance, which was now support, and bounced off of it quite nicely. So I'd say things are looking bullish in the short to medium term at the moment. It looks like the trend is starting to move back in the upwards direction from this bit of a sell-off here and little indecisiveness. Trend seems to be a little bit stronger, moving in the upwards direction. If we have a look at XLF, the financial portion of SPY, you can see that it still looks like there is room to move lower. Prices made a sharp decline, sort of consolidated a bit, and it looks more than likely that it's gearing up to make another sharp decline there in the financial sector. XLK, this is our technology sector, pretty much following the market, but you can see a bit of a stronger candle there closing towards the high of day. Not as much of a wick on top as SPY. So technology looking good there. So that might be able to drag the market a little higher right now. It's pretty much a push and pull between technology and financials. Whether or not one wants to move in one direction more than the other, that will determine which way the market ultimately ends up going. XOP, oil and gas. This one's actually pretty interesting. I'd say this looks like a pretty good opportunity if you were to swing some options on this one. There's a very clear resistance point here, right around 31.35. If the market can break over higher than that, I'd say XOP, the oil and gas sector, could run a little bit higher, maybe up to here at 34, based on this resistance over here and support here. So XOP, there's an idea for you. But back to SPY. Looking at SPY, we're going to zoom in yet again. We're going to go to the 30-minute, and this is just to point out a bit of that trend change I was talking about. We were seeing some lower highs, so had a high, lower high, lower high, lower high. This was a clear downtrend that was forming. We had lower low, and then we had an equal low, which could potentially signal the reversal of a trend. And then obviously we had a higher high, a higher low, lower obviously, but then this is where it really is sort of revealing. We have a higher low than here, and then another higher low, and now another set of higher lows here. So this is why I'm talking about a potential bullish move in the short term here. Looks like the trend has started to turn from this bearish little panic that was last Friday, not this previous Friday, but the Friday before that. And now markets are starting to move in the upwards direction after figuring out this little decision point. You can see if we draw in some patterns here, the market is simply breaking out of something that looks like this. Market was indecisive, bouncing around in this range, and then we finally get out of it, and it looks like it wants to make a move higher, possibly up to our resistance here. So that's what I was watching on SPY. Back to the QQQ chart, still looks good. We are still above our support trend line here, above our resistance here. So things are looking good on the Qs. Again, this one tracks technology, and as we saw, the tech sector portion of SPY is looking good. So this one does have some more room to run. Our next resistance point is going to be that previous high, if I can get the right tool. right around in here at 182.79. So look for a resistance point there, but a continued move higher for the week. IWM, the one that has been leading the way, potentially. You can see that we're not nearly as close to our resistance point here. Things could still move a little bit higher, which would indicate that the rest of markets could move a little bit higher as well. And then it's more than likely that IWM gets rejected here again, since we've already been rejected a few times at that place. And then we come back down. It does look on this term, we are having lower highs and lower lows. So I'd look for the next lower high and then expect a lower low. But again, support down here at 148 first and then the lower low. Quickly looking at the VIX, you can see that we've gotten rejected pretty much at the resistance trend line. Volatility continuing to dry up a little bit and moving in the downwards direction back into our sort of grind zone. So if the market can continue to grind higher and just sort of go that way, I would expect that volatility continues to dribble back in between this range. Probably not getting all the way down to 9, but definitely below and staying below 15 if we don't get any massive panic sells in the upcoming future. Alrighty, getting into our companies now, we're going to start with Apple. Apple is a pretty bullish pattern right now. We see a big move up, a little bit of consolidation, and then normally a big move up again follows. So what we're looking at now is for a break of this level here, our current high, our recent high here at 197.50 just about. If Apple can first push up through the daily 200, then push up through 197.57, it very well could go to 200, get rejected there because of some psychological resistance. But after that, quite a little ways Apple could run, possibly all the way up to 214.51 based on our next resistance. So keep that in mind on Apple, but we do need to see for that to happen, this bit of a trend continue. So a nice big green candle on Monday would be nice. A break of that 200 SMA and buyers to step in would be nice, pushing us back up to our recent high. Moving on to Netflix now, we can get rid of this resistance line. It's not quite doing the job for us. Instead, our rising wedge support and resistance is doing a much better job of telling the story. So we had a pullback to our lower support zone. 50 SMA coincided quite nicely. We had a hammer there on Friday. Let's zoom in a little more. So a hammer doji here on Friday, but no real follow through, or Thursday rather, no real follow through on Friday rather. So I'd be interested to see if we get that follow through on Monday and we push back up towards our upper resistance trend line. If that does happen, our target here is right around 375, I would say, is a good target for it. That's just a little ways north of here, so right around here by the end of the week. Could very well happen, but we do have to clear this resistance here. Let's draw that one in. That would be much better than what we had. Very clear resistance here at 371.64 just about. So we do have to push up through that and sort of this whole zone up here before we attempt our breakout of the upper resistance trend line. Tesla had an interesting week. We were expecting it to go to 250, didn't quite make it all the way there. Instead, putting in this hammer here on Monday and then just going on a nice move in the upwards direction. We found some resistance here based on our prior support, which was good to see. If we get a break of this on Monday, I could see Tesla coming back up and attempting our resistance trend line, coinciding with the 50 SMA as it continues to move down, getting rejected there, possibly back testing this area and maybe bouncing in the upwards direction. We talk about Tesla being one of those range-bound stocks, so it's sort of at the lower end of the range now. I could see it if that breakout back test happens, a continued move higher. You can see just sort of what happens every time it gets down in this area. Somehow finds its way all the way back up to right around 380 or so. So keep that one in mind on Tesla. A little too volatile for me. I tend to stay away, but if you feel comfortable with it, go for it. Alibaba had a good week, good ending to the week, a nice green candle there. We can see that if we can push through this resistance here at 183, it's likely we go to our next one here at 188. Instead, if we get rejected, our supports are mapped out for us. 50 SMA is going to start catching up to this level here. So any sort of pullback into there would be temporarily viable, maybe for an intraday bounce or something like that. It does look like we sort of have a support trend line that could be drawn. Just sort of seeing this now. Something like that. That candle didn't quite get down into it, but we do have something like this happening. So if you see it come down here, 50 SMA starts to provide support, look for a bounce in the upwards direction. If we break through this, we're talking about 188.04. Facebook's starting to fight back. This candle here was a little nasty, implying some selling, but sort of finding some support right where moving averages are starting to converge, which is a good thing. Maybe we see a double bottom here on Facebook. We get bottom 1, 2, and now we have a bit of a support trend line, something like that. So if we can see Facebook hang on to this support trend line, break back through, I'd say things are looking good for a move up higher. If we break through that resistance, I could potentially see Facebook coming back up to 179. Anything higher than that is going to be 188.30. NVDA is sort of looking like Apple. We have a nice bullish move upwards, and now it's sort of consolidating. What you see here is a pennant. So instead of a flag, it's just a pennant. Looks something like that. Consolidation in a symmetrical triangle. Looks more than likely that we're at the upper range of it after a few days, that we break to the upside, possibly go to 190, and that would sort of put us back in the gap fill territory. Somewhere back around there. So that's what I would look for, a bullish breakout on NVIDIA. If we do roll over though, looking for support to come in down here again, and then anything lower than that, support around 165 just about, based on some of these highs here. ROKU, currently a little bearish on ROKU just because it's given up one of its support trend lines. It looks like it's sort of back testing it here. So depending on what happens Monday, if we break back into the range, I could potentially see going bullish on it, looking for a breakout above this resistance here at 68 just about. But if we can't get back into this above this support zone, I would look for a turnover, a rollover back down here to 59.76 based on the low. Anything lower than that, our next support line is down here. You just have to keep up with that one on the daily. That's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a thumbs up. If you would like to see me review any other tickers, have any questions or comments, let me know down below. If you enjoyed this content, subscribe. And as always, I wish you a green trading week.